Welcome back to Today. One word to unite a country. Australia is starting 2021 with a change to the national anthem, with the words young and free replaced by one and free. The Governor-General approved the change to the contentious lyrics after it was recommended by the government following consultation with federal cabinet and state premiers. For more, we're joined by Nine Honey's Shelley Horton and journalist John Mangos. Good morning. Happy New Year to the both of you.
Happy New Year.
Shelley, we'll begin with you.
Happy New Year.
It's one word change, but there's probably one word to describe this all. Finally.
Yes, I completely agree, and I think it's time that we actually understand that this makes a difference to our First Nation people. And I would like to go even further, and the Olivia Fox rendition, when she sang it in her traditional Indigenous language, I would love that to be taught at school. I think it is something that we can do to show that we understand that it was a white settlement and that the Indigenous people have been here for many, many years before us. And it's at no cost to us to make a change to a word. And I think if it helps and makes other people more comfortable, it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah, that's a system used by both the Kiwis and the South Africans with the multi-language singing of the anthem. John, first to this change and also Shelley's idea. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see it. I don't think it'll happen for a while, though, the bilingual. But the change, I just think it's fantastic they dropped it on us on New Year's Eve. What a great way to start the new year after last year. You know, the idea was floated a month or two ago by Premier Gladys Berejiklian here in New South Wales. And it kind of went quiet, didn't it? And then they dropped it on us last night that it's gone through and we've woken up this morning and we are one and free, which I just think is fantastic change. Personally, I'd like to see the tune changed. I've never been a big rap for the melody. All those years ago, I actually voted for Waltzing Matilda, but that's another story. The rest of Australia wasn't that keen on it. But I think doing it in the two languages, even just one verse, would be such a unifying thing to do.
Yeah, the only irony of it is that we say one and free at a time when we're divided by borders and with fewer freedoms than most of us have had for decades. But that's because of these intensifying calls this morning for New South Wales Premier to make masks mandatory and the state's COVID outbreak continuing to spread. We've seen Victoria bringing back its mandatory mask rule and shutting down the borders. We've seen other states locking New South Wales and Victoria out. John, should masks be mandatory?
Look, I'm really careful here, Charles, not to be, as so many people are, an armchair expert. I have nowhere near the field of expertise that Dr. Kerry Chant has. And she has guided the state of New South Wales brilliantly through all of this. Now, there's a reason. You can't get it right or wrong on this. If they'd said, like, everybody's now, it's mandatory to wear a mask, they'd be copping flack for being Dictator Dan and telling people what to do. So you can't really get it right. What they've said is be responsible. If you live in the Northern Beaches, as I do, that's the border right there between the Northern Beaches and south of Sydney, or south of the Northern Beaches. We're all doing the right thing. Yes, I wear a mask when I go to the supermarket. Yes, I wear a mask when I go out. But I'm kind of glad that it's not mandatory. Again, we've got to be careful not to be armchair experts and try and second guess what the real experts are saying. There's a reason. And as I say, if they'd made it mandatory, we'd be standing here this morning bagging them for telling us how to live our lives. So let's all take a chill pill on this one and just do the right thing.
Shelley, I'm going to come to you on masks shortly, but John, the one thing you are an expert on is what life is like in the Northern Beaches at the moment. You've been through a lockdown Christmas, now a lockdown New Year's. How's everyone doing?
Yeah. Look, we're okay. As you can see, we really live in a really ugly part of Sydney. I haven't left the house for a week, other than to go up to the shops and get milk and bread. And look, we're just dealing with it because we want it shut down. We want to do the right thing. As I say, you're actually looking at the border right there. Other side of the water there is a suburb called Mossman for people who don't live in Sydney. And then you go further south into the city of the CBD. North of here, we go all the way up another 20 k's to Avalon, where the first cluster broke out. None of us like being stuck at home, but we're doing the right thing, and that's the way we're going to shut it down. That's why I say, if the experts say do the right thing, stay at home, and we won't have to make it mandatory to wear a mask, you know what, we cop it, because none of us want this thing. We all want 2021 to be a whole lot better, so we're just dealing with it.
So Shelley, to avoid more Sydney-siders and more Australians being stuck at home, a mask's the way?
Mate, if I am anything, it is an armchair expert. And I will say, yes, let's make it mandatory. I mean, we've seen what's happened in Melbourne. We don't want that happening in Sydney. But if Gladys doesn't want to make it mandatory, I think everyone just do it anyway. Don't wait until you have to be told that it must happen. Do the right thing. Because the thing is, we are at that precipice at the moment that we may have to go into lockdown, and I will do anything to avoid it. But can I also say, if you're wearing masks, you can make them fashion. Check this out. That's my mask, everyone.
Yeah.
A little bit of a sparkle.
Disco ball feels
As
it all.
if I wouldn't have a mask like that.
Feels pretty on brand. Of course, this all comes as the blame game over Victoria's new cluster begins. It's clear that Victorian authorities think it came from New South Wales. Former World Health Organisation epidemiologist Professor Adrian Esterman said the state should have locked New South Wales out sooner. Shelley, we saw the long queues on the border as holidaymakers north of the Murray were frantically scrambling to get back south late last night. It's a terrible way to spend New Year's Eve. Everyone's talking about this idea of closing. Have we gone too far with closes, or should they have happened quicker?
Look, it's really hard. I completely understand how people in Melbourne are feeling because they did that horrible lockdown, and for them to get to 61 days of no cases was something that they were so proud of. So I can understand that they want the borders closed. I just had 2 weeks holiday seeing my family up in Queensland, and I got in just before the border closed, and I still had to go and get a COVID test and self-isolate until I had a negative result. And I was happy to do that because I don't want to be a risk to everyone else. So I think this is where we also need to bring in that personal responsibility and say, I'm going to do the right thing for everyone, not just be selfish.
John, you've been stuck there in Northern Beaches, but is it tough to see, not be able to see people that you love, family, friends, and also see people that you do love that are unable to see family and friends of theirs?
Oh, Charles, it's been awful. I mean, you ask me on a personal basis, I haven't seen my mum, who's elderly and not well. She has dementia and she lives in Melbourne. We haven't seen her for a year, and I was intending to drive the family down next week and go and see Grandma. And, you know, we can't see Mum, and that's very distressing. But then I don't want Mum to get sick either.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got to observe the rules. I've woken up this morning on this New Year's Day optimistic about the new year. I don't want to be a pessimist. It's really easy to look back at some of the state premiers and the federal government and start nitpicking what they got right and what they got wrong. Guys, let's get it all in perspective. Australia's done a brilliant job. In America, it's thousands every day. In the UK, it's thousands every day. Generally speaking, apart from a mistake here and there by a state premier, the country's done well, and we should really enjoy that and respect it and shut it down.
There are so many countries that give so much to trade places with where Australia is. We welcome the new year and appropriately.
Well, that's the point. That's why we shouldn't. That's what we shouldn't nitpick. You know, we should be really careful and be grateful for how well we've gone.
Yeah, and we had a chance to be grateful last night because we had that New Year's celebration. It was COVID style in some cities, open in others. There was fireworks displays, food festivals in Melbourne. There were celebrations coast to coast. Of course, New Year's comes New Year's resolutions. Shelley, making them is one thing, keeping them is another. Have you made any resolutions? And almost 7 hours in, are you keeping them?
Can I just say a big hell no? Because I was one of those people at 2020 saying, this is going to be my year. I'm going to own it. It's going to be incredible. So I have learnt my lesson, and I am just very cautiously walking into 2021, careful not to break anything and keeping my hands to my sides and being very quiet. So no resolutions for me.
John, how about you?
You wouldn't be surprised, Charles, to hear from me that I'm going to try and adopt a resolution that I put off from last New Year's, and that is to stop procrastinating.
That is
Nice.
a very appropriate way to end this segment, the first for 2021. Shelley, John, so great to spend this New Year's morning with you. John, best of luck with the rest of what happens in the Northern Beaches. And
Happy New
Shelley,
Year.
best of luck
Thank
with
you.
those New Year's resolutions from 2020 and beyond.
Happy New Year, guys.
Ahead this Friday.